In this video, I'll share some strangely odd and mysterious murder stories that I've recently found. They aren't very long and detailed stories, but I do believe you will find them quite interesting as I did. Stay around to the end of the last story as it's truly a mystery surrounded by a tragic event. Buckle up for another ride through strange, with me and odd mysteries stories. Before I dive into the next story, I'd like to plant some background about the hardiness of the people that would have been involved in this story. Consider this: you live in a country that is experiencing incredible poverty, but the people with money come up with an idea. Let's send other people to that place founded over 100 years ago because we heard there was gold and silver there so that they could bring riches back to us and become even richer. But they had to offer something to get people to do their dirty work. So they offered 50 acres of land to the settlers to the land of gold and riches. To get to this place, you'll have to be on one of three ships, the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, which set sail from London on December 20, 1606, bound for Virginia. The ships carried 105 passengers and 39 crew members on the 4-month transatlantic voyage. A 17th century source noted that a total of 71 people were aboard the Susan Constant, 52 aboard the Godspeed, and 21 aboard the Discovery. Oh, and if that doesn't sound like there is much room for you, there isn't. Can you sleep standing up while the ship rocks in the ocean? Plus, when the urge of human nature visits upon you and you need a bathroom, when there isn't going to be one, and you'll have to be creative because that can't be stored on board. The first group sent was all men and boys, plus the ships also carried a full cargo and livestock. Living conditions were cramped and tedious. The settlers, who were a broad mix of English society, including gentlemen, adventurers, tradesmen, and laborers, had no duties aboard the ships. But the dream of what lies ahead pushes their resolve to make this hard journey. Basically, all of you will be living on board a hard wooden vessel for 4 months, and this won't be Royal Caribbean or Carnival Cruise Lines by any stretch of your imagination. So consider the physical and mental state of the people that successfully complete the journey. Maybe in another video I'll present all the troubles in this new settlement, but for this video I'm sharing just one rather dark chapter of early American history. Picture this: the early 1600s, a group of determined folks from Great Britain, known as the Seven Original Counselors, embark on a grueling 4-month journey across the Atlantic. Their destination? A swampy island on the James River that would soon be known as Jamestown, Virginia. Now, let me be clear, Jamestown was no paradise. It was isolated, cramped, and swarming with mosquitoes. The dreams of finding silver and gold quickly faded into a harsh reality of a high mortality rate from sickness, conflict with Native Americans, and internal strife among the settlers. Over 100 souls, including Captain Edward Maria Wingfield and young Captain George Kendall, tried to make this place their new home. But not long into their settlement, things turned sour for Kendall. Less than 2 years after their arrival, he was executed. And here's why: amidst the backdrop of growing tensions, dwindling supplies, and hastily erected fortifications, a series of plots and counterplots were hatching. Kendall was kicked out from the council and confined to a ship. When the settlers grew unhappy with Wingfield's leadership, they replaced him too, but chaos ensued. Amidst this turmoil, Kendall's ultimate betrayal was revealed. He was accused of planning a mutiny with the ousted Wingfield, and worse, of being a spy for the Spanish, intending to reveal critical secrets. This accusation of treason was the final straw. Fast forward centuries, and what have we uncovered? Archaeologists found a skeleton within the original Jamestown fort's walls, riddled with bullets and buried with a semblance of dignity. Many believe these remains could be Kendall himself, marking him as possibly the first person to receive the Western death penalty in what's now the United States, a firing squad. Virginia's history with the death penalty continued to evolve. Just 4 years after Kendall's demise, laws were enacted and various crimes could lead to the gallows. This story is a sad reminder of the complexities and darkness in an early American settlement. As I dug deeper into this story, it's important to remember how the past, with all its mysteries and conflicts, continues to shape our world. The story of ambition, treachery, and harsh realities is not just history, it's a lesson on the lengths we will go for our own survival. With that, I'd like to leave you pondering Kendall's alleged final words, a testament to the indomitable human spirit even in the face of death. Quote, I am firmly convinced no person or people can ever prosper by indecency, inhumanity, brutally, and by disregarded human rights and human liberty. If you get me for defending the rights of men and women, be they Indian or white, it will be for a righteous cause. End quote. Now, I'm curious about your thoughts on this story. Also, let me know in the comments if you'd like to learn more of the harrowing, deadly, and strange experiences of the settlers in Jamestown. I know almost everyone has heard of the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts in the late 1600s, but this story came to my attention, and I had no idea that a man could be swept up in these accusations. Plus, instead of being burned at the stake like a witch, the colonists have another crazy form of torture that I'd never heard of before, but it turns out to be true. So, I'd like to share with you the story of Giles Corey, a man whose resolve and tragic end during the Salem witch trials have left an indelible mark in history. Born on August 16, 1611, and passing on September 19, 1692, Corey's life was anything but ordinary. Originally hailing from England, Corey was a farmer with a past checkered by incidents of petty theft and an attempted murder. But it was the events of 1692 that dramatically shifted the course of his life. That year, both he and his third wife Martha were accused of witchcraft. He'd been widowed twice before, and at the time he was 81 years old. Martha was arrested on March 19th. Initially, Giles was swept up in the hysteria and believed the accusations against his wife. However, the tides turned when he was arrested on April 18th alongside Mary Warren, Abigail Hobbs, and Bridget Bishop. The next day, during a brutal examination by the authorities, Abigail Hobbs turned attention away from herself and accused Giles of being a wizard. In a defiant move, Giles refused to plead either guilty or not guilty, which led to his imprisonment and arraignment at the September court session. But Giles's refusal to plead triggered a sinister aspect of the law known as peine forte et dure, a cruel method intended to force a plea from those who refused to enter a plea. This punishment meant that Giles was laid on his back on the bare floor, sometimes over sharp stones. He was to be naked unless decency forbade it, and a heavy weight was placed upon his body. The intention was to press him for an answer, literally. The only sustenance he received was a scant amount of the worst bread on day one, and on the second day 3 draughts of standing water. This was his ordeal until he either pleaded or died. On September 17th, Sheriff George Corwin began the pressing procedure. Even as the weights piled on, Giles remained resolute, not crying out in pain. Each time he was asked to plead, he responded with a demand for more weight. It's said that Corwin, in a cruel twist, stood on the stones himself to increase the pressure. As a witness, Robert Califf recounted the horrifying sight of Giles's tongue being pressed back into his mouth at the end of Corwin's cane. There are varied accounts of Giles's last words. Some say he repeated his defiant request for more weight. Others suggest he cursed Salem with his dying breath. But what remains clear is his extraordinary act of resistance. His refusal to plead meant that, unusually, his estate was not seized by the government but passed to his sons, a posthumous victory against an oppressive system. Giles Corey's death is believed to have occurred in a field next to the prison, a place now within Howard Street Cemetery in Salem. While his exact burial site is unmarked and unknown, his memory is honored with a memorial plaque in nearby Charter Street Cemetery. This story is a terrible reminder of how devious we humans can be when it comes to torture and extraordinary defiance of a man of conviction. Giles Corey's story stands as a testament to his strength amidst hysteria. And so I leave you with this thought. What a way to be punished for maintaining silence. Maybe, just maybe, he knew keeping silent would ensure his estate remained with his sons. Have you ever heard of this before? I've been to Salem personally and never heard of this story until recently. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin was a Russian mystic and holy man. He is best known for having befriended the imperial family of Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, through whom he gained considerable influence in the final years of the Russian Empire. In late 1906, Rasputin began acting as a faith healer for Nicholas's and Alexandra's only son, Alexei Nikolaevich, who suffered from hemophilia. He was a divisive figure at court, seen by some Russians as a mystic, visionary, and prophet, and by others as a religious charlatan. The extent of Rasputin's power reached an all-time high in 1915, when Nicholas left St. Petersburg to oversee the Imperial Russian Army as it was engaged in the First World War. In his absence, Rasputin and Alexandra consolidated their influence across the Russian Empire. However, as Russian military defeats mounted on the Eastern Front, both figures became increasingly unpopular, and in the early morning of 30 December 1916, Rasputin was assassinated by a group of conservative Russian noblemen who opposed his influence over the imperial family at the home of Prince Yusupov. He died of 3 gunshot wounds, one of which was a close-range shot to his forehead. Little is certain about his death beyond this, and the circumstances of his death have been the subject of considerable speculation. According to Smith, quote, "What really happened at the Yusupov home will never be known." The story that Yusupov recounted in his memoirs, however, has become the most frequently told version of events. According to Yusupov's account, Rasputin was invited to his palace shortly after midnight and ushered into the basement. Yusupov offered tea and cakes which had been laced with poison. After initially refusing the cakes, Rasputin began to eat them and, to Yusupov's surprise, appeared unaffected by the poison. Rasputin then asked for some Madeira wine, which had also been poisoned, and drank 3 glasses, but still showed no sign of distress. At around 2:30 a.m., Yusupov excused himself to go upstairs, where his fellow conspirators were waiting. He took a revolver from Pavlovich, then returned to the basement and told Rasputin that he'd, quote, "better look at the crucifix and say a prayer," referring to a crucifix in the room, then shot him once in the chest. The conspirators then drove to Rasputin's apartment, with Sukhotin wearing Rasputin's coat and hat in an attempt to make it look as though Rasputin had returned home that night. Upon returning to his palace, Yusupov went back to the basement to ensure that Rasputin was dead. Suddenly, Rasputin leaped up and attacked Yusupov, who freed himself with some effort and fled upstairs. Rasputin followed Yusupov into the palace's courtyard, where he was shot by Purishkevich. He collapsed into a snowbank. The conspirators then wrapped his body in cloth, drove it to the Petrovsky Bridge, and dropped it into the Little Nevka River. In an unsubstantiated claim, Grand Duchess Tatiana, who was earlier alleged to have been raped by Rasputin, was present at the site of Rasputin's murder, quote, disguised as a lieutenant of the Chevaliers Gardes, so that she could revenge herself on Rasputin, who had tried to violate her. Maurice Paul Olog, the French ambassador to Russia, wrote that Tatiana had supposedly witnessed Rasputin's castration, but he doubted the credibility of the rumor. In a modern analysis of Rasputin's death, published on the 100th anniversary of the event, Dr. Carolyn Harris of the University of Toronto notes that the actual circumstances were apparently less traumatic than Yusupov's account. Rasputin's daughter recorded that her father disliked sweet food and would not have eaten the supposedly poisoned cakes. An autopsy account by the official surgeon involved has no record of poisoning or drowning, but simply records death by a single bullet fired into the head at close range. No matter what reports I could find, it was very apparent that this guy befriended the royalty of Russia at the time as a supposed doctor, and everyone except the imperial family could see what a fake he was and wanted him dead. What are your thoughts about this story? So, this guy enjoyed the company and protection of the Russian royal family, but as soon as the people could get their hands on him out of the reach of the royal family, they executed him. What are your thoughts about this story? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video. In this story, I'd like to share with you a remarkable case that unfolded in Texas, a story of tragedy, loss, and ultimately justice, shrouded in a truly strange mystery. In the small town of Alvin, Texas, on December 7th, 2012, a devastating incident took place. David Barajas, a loving father, was faced with an unimaginable nightmare. His two young sons, David Jr., aged 12, and Caleb, aged 11, had been killed in a heart-wrenching accident. They were struck by a drunk driver, 20-year-old Jose Banda, while helping their dad push their disabled truck down a rural road. This case, covered by multiple news outlets, became a national headline. The question that arose was whether David Barajas had taken the law into his own hands and sought revenge against the man responsible for his son's deaths by executing him with a single gunshot wound to the head. The initial allegation was that David, in a fit of rage, ran the remaining distance to his home and retrieved a gun and then returned to the scene to shoot Jose Banda. Fast forward to the courtroom, and we find David Barajas on trial for murder. He stood accused of gunning down Jose Banda, the drunk driver, shortly after the accident. However, the jury's verdict in August 2014 acquitted him of these charges, leading to a whirlwind of media attention and public debate. But here's where the case begins to take a mysterious turn. No one has ever found the gun used to shoot Mr. Banda. Despite a thorough investigation, the murder weapon remained mysteriously elusive. This raises the question, who did fire the weapon that killed Mr. Banda? Adding to the mystery, there are no witnesses who can definitively say they saw Mr. Banda being shot. The absence of eyewitness accounts leaves a significant gap in the narrative, leaving us to ponder what truly transpired in those critical moments. To further deepen the mystery, David Barajas was tested for gun residue on his hands and clothes, and the results were perplexing. There was no trace of gun residue, indicating that he had not recently fired a weapon. This finding leaves us with a confounding puzzle. If David Barajas didn't pull the trigger, then who did? This case highlights the complexities of the legal system, the importance of eyewitness testimony, and the lingering questions that may never be fully answered. It serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring human capacity for compassion, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy and the mysteries that can persist in the aftermath of a devastating accident. In conclusion, the acquittal of David Barajas in the shooting death of Jose Banda, the drunk driver who killed his two young sons, remains shrouded in mystery. It is a case that challenges our understanding of justice, leaving us with unanswered questions and a profound sense of mystery about the true events of that fateful night. Surely your thoughts on what happened in this case can be shared in the comments below. Thanks again for joining me in another video filled with mystery, intrigue, odd events, and questions that in some cases for many years remain unanswered. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed this video, here are 2 more videos that I've done recently, and I invite you to watch more videos here at Odd Mystery Stories. My name is Vince, thanks again, and look for our new videos each week on Mondays and Fridays.